$50,000. She said it like she was ordering coffee, slid a stapled stack of paper across the diner table, right past the ketchup bottle, and folded her hands like she'd just made a reasonable request. To marry me. On paper. For 1 year. I laughed. Right in her face. Couldn't help it. I'd come into that diner for the meatloaf special, and a break from a garage that was 30 days from belonging to the bank. And here was this woman, in a coat that cost more than my truck, offering me the exact number that would save my life like it was pocket change. "Lady," I said, "you got the wrong table. Dean Marsh, 34. You own Marsh & Son Auto, out on Route 9. The one your father left you. It's 4 payments behind, and the bank filed on it 11 days ago." She didn't blink. "You've got 2 employees, Earl and Gus, both past 70, both of whom you keep on payroll, even though the numbers say you can't. Last Tuesday, you gave the kid who busses these tables your last 20 because his register came up short and you didn't want him written up." She tilted her head. "I don't have the wrong table. I've been looking for you for 2 weeks. That stopped the laugh in my throat. "I need a good man who needs money and won't fall in love with me," she said. "You are, near as I can tell, the only person in this county who's both. So, 50,000. 1 year. Read the terms before you decide I'm crazy. Here's the thing. Nobody tells you about being 30 days from losing the only thing your dead father ever gave you. You stop being able to afford your pride." I told myself I'd hear her out, just to be polite. That's a lie. I picked up the contract because 50 grand was the difference between Earl and Gus having jobs, and Earl and Gus sitting in a room somewhere waiting to die. So I read it. Clause 1. I'd appear in public as her husband whenever required. Fine. Clause 2. I'd move into her house. Weird, but fine. Clause 3, 4, 5. Public appearances. No other relationships during the term. Complete discretion. Fine. Fine, fine. Then I got to Clause 7. I read it twice. Then I looked up at her. "You want to run this one by me out loud?" I said. "Because either I need glasses, or this contract says I have to share a bed with you." For the first time, something cracked in that perfect composure. She looked, for just a second, like a woman who hadn't slept in a week. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Clause 7. I'll explain. And when I do, you're going to understand why it's the most important line in the whole thing." Her name was Julia Sterling, and by the time she finished explaining, I understood 2 things. 1. She wasn't a rich woman buying a toy. 2. I was probably going to say yes, and it was going to blow up my whole careful life. Her father had built Sterling Machine Works from a 2-man shop into the biggest employer in the county. 400 people on that factory floor. Half the town. Basically, everybody's cousin, everybody's dad. When he died, he left the company to Julia, but he left it wrapped in a will, written by a stubborn old man who thought his daughter needed a husband to be whole. The will said she had to be married by her 30th birthday and stay married a full year, in a real household, or control of the company passed to her uncle. "And my Uncle Victor," Julia said, "has already got a buyer lined up. A conglomerate out of state. They'll strip the machines, ship the contracts overseas, and put 400 people out of work by Christmas." Her jaw tightened. "My father spent 40 years making sure this town had somewhere to work. I'm not going to be the Sterling who let his brother sell it for scrap. So I need a husband, and my birthday is in 3 weeks. And Clause 7, I said, the bed. Victor knows the will as well as I do. The second I marry, he'll do everything he can to prove it's a sham. Because if he can prove the marriage isn't bona fide, the whole thing's void, and the company's his." She met my eyes. "He'll hire people. He'll have the housekeeper watching. He'll send the estate's lawyer for surprise visits. Separate bedrooms is the first thing they look for. So it can't be an act we can drop when the door closes. Dean, there is no door. It has to be real. Every hour of every day. Down to the toothbrushes in the same cup and 2 heads on 2 pillows. When somebody comes checking at 6 in the morning. That's clause 7. It's not about, color came into her face. It's not about anything but survival. Yours, and mine, and 400 other people's. I thought about Earl, who taught me to set a timing chain when I was 9. I thought about my father's name on a sign that was about to come down. I signed it. There's a pen behind the napkins, she said, already knowing. Before I tell you how a contract turned into the realest thing that ever happened to me, quick thing. If you've ever been the ordinary guy nobody expected much from, the one who just shows up and does the right thing when it's hard, and you like a story where a man like that finally gets his, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and tell me down in the comments where in the world you're listening from right now. I read them. It keeps me going. All right, where were we? Right. I just signed my life away in a diner. We got married 3 days later at the courthouse. No flowers. No family. Mine's just me, and hers was the problem we were trying to solve. Earl and Gus were the witnesses. Gus cried, the old softy, and told Julia she was getting the best man in the county, and she looked at him like she wasn't sure if that was a joke. Then the judge said the words, and I put a $40 band on the finger of a woman I'd known for 3 days. And just like that, I was married to a millionaire. Then we drove to her house, and I understood I'd married into a whole different country. The place was enormous, marble that echoed, a kitchen you could park my truck in, and quiet, this heavy, expensive quiet, like the house was holding its breath. She showed me around, and it took 11 minutes, and the whole time, a woman in a gray uniform followed us at a distance, watching. That's Mrs. Pell, Julia murmured. Housekeeper. She's been here 20 years, and she is loyal to my uncle down to her shoes. Assume every word you say in this house goes straight to Victor. Assume it always. She raised her voice, bright and fake. And this is our room, honey. Our room. 1 bed. King-sized, sure, but 1. Mrs. Pell lingered in the doorway, with a stack of towels she did not need to be holding. It's perfect, I said, and put my arm around my wife of 4 hours, and felt her go stiff as a fence post. We're going to be real happy here. That night was the first test of Clause 7, and I'll be honest with you, I've rebuilt transmissions with more grace than I got into that bed. We lay there in the dark, a foot of cold sheet between us, both flat on our backs like 2 people at a funeral. There's a line of pillows, I said. You built a wall of pillows. I did. You know I'm a grown man, right? I've shared close quarters. I did 2 years in the army before the garage. You could set your watch by how much I'm not going to bother you. Silence. Then, small, you were in the army? Motor pool. Fixed the things that got shot at. I put my hands behind my head. Why? What'd the file say about me? The file didn't say the army. Well, there you go. I'm a mystery. I heard something in the dark that might have been the ghost of a laugh. Get some sleep, Mrs. Marsh. Wall of pillows and all. I'm not going anywhere. That's the whole point of me. She was quiet a long while. Then, so soft I almost missed it. It's Sterling. I kept Sterling. Course you did, I said. Night, Julia. And that was Clause 7. The first night, anyway. A foot of sheet and a wall of pillows and 2 people pretending to sleep. I lay awake most of it, listening to her breathe finally slow down. And I thought, this is the strangest money I will ever earn. I had no idea. The garage got saved that week. Her first payment cleared the bank. Earl and Gus kept their jobs. My father's sign stayed up. I should have felt like a genius. Instead, I felt like I'd sold something I couldn't name, and I couldn't figure out why, so I did what I always do when I can't figure something out. I went to work with my hands, and I didn't talk about it. Earl figured it out anyway. Earl figures everything out. He's 73, and he's got hands like old leather, and he doesn't say much. But the day the bank notice came down off the door, he watched me pull it and fold it and put it in my pocket, and he said, around a coffee that was mostly sugar, that the Sterling girl's money savin' us. I didn't answer. Over by the lift, Gus dropped a socket. Your daddy, Earl said, used to say a man who won't take help when his people need it ain't proud. He's just stupid with a nicer word for it. He took a sip. Whatever you did, boy, you did it for me and him. He nodded at Gus, who was pretending very hard to look for that socket. Don't go carrying it like a sin. We're too old to find new jobs, and you know it. It's complicated, Earl. Everything worth anything is. He rinsed his cup. She good to you? The Sterling girl? And I opened my mouth to say it was just business, and what came out instead was, she's lonelier than anybody I ever met, which surprised me, because I hadn't known I'd noticed. Earl gave me a long look over those leather hands, and he didn't say another word, but he didn't have to. Earl figures everything out. The clauses kept coming. Clause 1 meant public appearances, and the first big one was a company gala. 300 people, the whole executive floor, and the buyers from out of state, circling like they already owned the place. Julia briefed me in the car like a general. These people will look down on you, she said. The mechanic she married. Victor will have made sure everyone knows. Just stay close, smile, don't let them rattle you. Julia, what? I've had rich people look down on me my whole life. It's the most relaxing thing they do. I fixed my cheap tie in the mirror. Worry about yourself. I'll tell you what happened at that gala, because it's the night something changed. The suits did look down on me. Victor made his rounds, a big smooth man with Julia's father's jaw and none of his heart, and he introduced me to people as Julia's mechanic. Isn't that charming? And watched to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I shook hands and drank the free beer and let it roll off. But then I wandered off from the fancy tables, the way you do, and I ended up out by the loading dock, where the guys who'd set up the event were taking a smoke break. Factory floor guys, Sterling men, and one of them recognized me. Hey, ain't you the fella married Miss Julia? The mechanic? And instead of the fake smile I'd been wearing all night, I felt my shoulders come down for the first time in hours. We got to talking, real talking, about the plant, about the buyout rumors, about how scared everybody on the floor was that their jobs were about to get shipped overseas, about a lathe operator named Danny whose wife was sick and who couldn't afford to lose his insurance. I knew these men. Not them specifically, but I knew them. They were Earl and Gus. They were my father. They were me. I didn't know Julia had come looking for me. I didn't know she was standing in the doorway, watching me stand out there in the cold with a dozen factory guys, listening, actually listening, to the exact people her whole desperate scheme was designed to save. She didn't say anything about it in the car, but she was quiet in a different way. And that night, when we got into bed, the wall of pillows was one pillow shorter. A storm rolled in around 2 in the morning. Big one. Thunder that rattled the windows in that big marble house. I'm a heavy sleeper, but I woke up because the mattress was shaking, and it took me a second to understand it was her. Julia Sterling, who ran a 400-person company and stared down her uncle without blinking, was curled up on her side of the pillow wall, shaking like a kid. Hey, I said, quiet. It's just a storm. I know, it's just a storm. Her voice was tight. I've been afraid of them since I was 6. It's stupid. Go back to sleep. I'm not going to do that. Another crack of thunder. She flinched, and I made a decision, and I reached over, and I pulled 2 of the pillows out of the wall she'd built, and I set them on the floor. Come here. I'm not going to touch you, but you don't have to shake by yourself over there. That's a dumb way to spend a storm. She didn't move for a long time. Then, slowly, she scooted across the cold middle of the bed until her back was maybe 6 inches from my side, close enough that I could feel she was still shaking. My father used to sit up with me during storms, she said, to the dark. Told me the thunder was just the sky, rearranging the furniture. After he died, there was nobody to... She stopped. Mrs. Pell doesn't do storms. Victor certainly doesn't. Sky's rearranging the furniture, I said. That's a good one. I'm gonna steal that. She let out a breath that was half a laugh. And somewhere in the next hour, between the thunder and the rain on that big expensive roof, Julia Sterling fell asleep 6 inches from a man she was paying to be there, and she stopped shaking, and I lay awake the whole rest of the night, dead still so I wouldn't wake her, thinking a thought I had no business thinking about a woman I'd married for 50 grand. I would sit up through every storm for the rest of my life if she'd let me. That was the night the wall of pillows stopped meaning anything. We didn't talk about it, but it never got rebuilt. I noticed. I didn't say anything, but I noticed. Here's what nobody warns you about spending every hour of every day pretending to be married to somebody. Somewhere in all that pretending, you stop having to try so hard, because a bunch of it just becomes true. We started actually talking, in the dark, after the lights went off. The only place in that surveilled house that felt safe. She'd ask about my dad. I'd ask about hers. She told me about growing up rich and lonely. A kid rattling around this same marble house, raised more by Mrs. Pell than by anybody who loved her, learning young that people wanted things from a Sterling, and she could never tell who wanted her. That's why the contract, she said one night. I can't tell if a man wants me or the company. It's poisoned everything my whole life. At least with you. I know. You want the 50 grand. It's clean. It's honest. A pause. You're the first man I've ever been able to relax around, and it's because you're being paid to be here. Isn't that the saddest thing you've ever heard? And I lay there in the dark with a very uncomfortable feeling in my chest, because a month ago that would have been true, and it wasn't true anymore, and I didn't have the first idea what to do about it. Victor's people came at us harder after the gala, because Victor could smell that something was shifting, and it scared him. The worst one came on a Tuesday at 6:10 in the morning, pounding on the bedroom door. Mrs. Pell's voice, too pleased. Mr. and Mrs. Marsh, the estate attorney is here for the quarterly household review. He'd like to see you both. Now, if you're decent. Julia's eyes flew open. Mine did too. And here's the thing about 6 in the morning. You cannot fake a marriage that's been asleep for 6 hours in 6 seconds. There's a look. The lawyer knew the look. If he walked in and saw 2 people who'd clearly been sleeping like strangers, we were done. Julia went white. I did the only thing I could think of. Trust me, I whispered, and I messed up my own hair, and I pulled the covers half off, and I grabbed my shirt off the chair and threw it across the room, where it had looked thrown, and then I called out, rough and sleepy and irritated, as any husband dragged out of bed at dawn. Yeah, give us a second, would you? It's 6 in the morning. Jules, honey, where's my... And I looked at her, and something in her just understood. And she laughed, this real sleepy laugh, and called back, it's on the floor where you left it. It's always on the floor. And reached over and fixed my collar as the door opened, her hand on my chest, both of us squinting, and rumpled, and annoyed, and married. So married. And the lawyer took one look at the shirt on the floor, and my arm around her, and mumbled an apology, and got out of there in 90 seconds. The door clicked shut. We stayed frozen a beat. Then Julia dropped her forehead against my shoulder and started laughing, silent, shoulders shaking, and I was laughing too. And she said into my chest, "Where's my shirt, Jules, honey? You are a criminal." And I said, "Motor pool." We improvise, and for about 10 seconds we were just 2 people laughing in a bed. No contract, no clause, no uncle, and her hand was still flat on my chest, and neither of us moved it. Then she did, and cleared her throat, and got up, and the morning went back to being complicated. But it happened. I keep telling you these small things happened because that's how it goes. A marriage doesn't turn real all at once. It turns real in 90-second increments. when nobody's got time to guard against it. There was one more thing before Victor moved, and it's the one that did me in. A water main let go on the Sterling factory floor on a Saturday, flooded the machine bay, and the company's maintenance guy was out of town, and the emergency plumber quoted a number that would have shut the line down for a week. I happened to be there dropping something off for Julia. I heard the foreman on the phone about to panic, and I did what I do. I found the shutoff, I found the busted coupling, I drove to my own garage for parts, and I fixed it myself, flat on my back in 2 inches of water for 3 hours, with Danny the lathe operator handing me tools. I didn't know Julia was watching from the mezzanine. I didn't know she stood up there the whole 3 hours watching her paper husband lie in the flood, fixing her father's factory for free, joking with her workers, one of them, easy in a way she'd never once been easy in her own company. She never mentioned it. But that was the night she took my hand under the dinner table when there was no one there to perform for. No lawyer, no Mrs. Pell, just her hand finding mine because she wanted it there. That's around when Victor made his move. He'd been watching, testing, sending Mrs. Pell's little reports, but we were airtight, so he escalated. First, the estate lawyer showed up at 6 a.m. for a routine wellness check, and thank God for Clause 7, because he walked into a bedroom with 2 people and 2 pillows and a pair of my work boots by the door and nothing to report. Then a PI started sitting outside the garage. Then Victor tried to catch me alone. He caught me at the garage on a Thursday, rolled up in a car worth more than the building, stepped out, careful not to get grease on his shoes. "Dean," he said, warm as a snake, "man to man, let's talk numbers. I'm working. She's paying you $50,000 to wear a ring. I know about the contract, not the words, but I know a purchased marriage when I see one, and a judge will too, eventually. So let me make you a better offer." He smiled. $100,000, cash, today. All you do is sign an affidavit that the marriage is a sham you were paid to enter. You double your money, you keep your little garage free and clear forever, and you walk away clean. She never even has to know it came from you. And here's where the story cuts away, because I'm not going to tell you yet what I said to Victor Sterling in that garage. I'll tell you at the end. It matters where it lands. What I'll tell you is that I came home that night, and Julia knew something was wrong, because by then she could read me, and I wouldn't tell her what. And it was the first real fight we ever had. A fight 2 married people have, not 2 people running a con. And in the middle of it she said, "Why do you even care? It's a job, Dean. You're getting paid." And I heard myself say, too loud, "Don't call it a job to me, not anymore." And the whole room went silent, and we both stood there with the truth sitting between us, that neither of us had the guts to pick up. Then my pride kicked in, the way it always does, the thing that's wrecked every good thing I ever had. Because the fight underneath the fight was this. I couldn't stand being the paid man. Couldn't stand that the best thing in my life came with a price tag and a signature. My whole life I've refused to be anybody's charity. Refused to take a dollar I didn't earn with my hands. And here I was, living in a mansion, getting paid to love a woman I'd actually gone and fallen in love with, and it made me feel like exactly the kind of man I'd spent 34 years swearing I'd never be. So I pulled back, went cold, told myself it was cleaner that way, slept on my half of the bed like it was a job again. And Julia, who'd spent her whole life watching people want things from her, watched me go cold, and drew the only conclusion she could, that she'd been right all along. That the second it got complicated, I was just another man doing math about a Sterling. We had 3 weeks left on the contract, and we spent them like strangers. The day it all came apart was the board meeting, the one that would certify the marriage requirement met, and lock the company out of Victor's hands for good. Julia's 30th birthday, plus 1 year, to the day. Everyone in the room, the lawyers, the out-of-state buyers, who'd flown in like vultures who'd heard the marriage was crumbling, and Victor, smiling, holding a folder. He stood up before the vote, and he did the thing men like him always do. He took the truth, and he sharpened it into a knife. "Before we certify anything," Victor said, "the board should know the truth about my niece's marriage. It's a purchase. She hired this man, a bankrupt mechanic, 30 days from losing his business, and paid him $50,000 to play husband long enough to steal this company out from under its rightful management. I have the timeline. I have the financials. This isn't a marriage. It's fraud, and every person in this room is about to be party to it." The room turned. I watched it happen. I watched 300 years of country club instinct decide that of course, the mechanic. Of course it was a con. I watched Julia's face go white, watched her brace to lose everything, the company, the town's jobs, and worst of all, in front of all these people, to be exposed as a woman so unlovable she'd had to buy a husband. She looked at me, and I saw her expecting me to sit there, to let it happen, to be, in the end, exactly the paid man who takes the easy exit. So I stood up. "He's right about the money," I said, loud, clear. The whole room swung to me. She offered me 50 grand to marry her. I took it. My father's garage was 30 days from the bank, and I've got 2 employees past 70, with nowhere else to go, and I took her money to save their jobs, and I'd do it again tomorrow, and twice on Sunday. So yeah, Victor, you got that part right. Victor smiled, thinking he'd won. "Here's the part you left out," I said. 3 weeks ago, you drove out to my garage and you offered me $100,000, double, to sign a paper saying this marriage was fake, cash. Today, you said, I could have doubled my money, kept my garage free and clear, and walked away rich, and Julia never would have known it came from me. Those were your exact words. I let that sit, watched Victor's smile fall off his face. "Now, you're all business people. Explain something to me. If I'm a gold digger who married this woman for a payday, why in God's name would I turn down 100 grand to walk away? Why would a con man say no to double?" Nobody said anything. I'll tell you why. I looked at Victor, but I was talking to her. Because somewhere in the last year, it stopped being about the money. Because I fell in love with my wife. You sad, greedy man. And there is not enough cash in your account, or anybody else's, to make me sign a paper that says I didn't. I told you to go to hell in that garage, and I'm telling you again in front of your whole board. This marriage started as a contract. It is not a contract anymore. It hasn't been for a long, long time. I turned to Julia. Her hand was over her mouth. She was crying, not sad crying, the other kind. "I should have told you weeks ago," I said. Quieter now, just to her. 300 people be damned. I went cold because I couldn't stand being paid to love you when I'd have done it for free. That's not your fault. That's mine, and my stupid pride. But I'm done being cold. I'm your husband, not on paper, for real. If you'll have a broke mechanic who turned down the biggest check of his life because it had a lie attached to it. The board certified the marriage in about 90 seconds. Turns out, an attempted bribe is real hard to explain, and Victor had just confessed to one in front of a dozen witnesses and the company lawyers. He didn't just lose the vote, he lost his seat. The buyers flew home empty-handed. 400 people kept their jobs, and Danny the lathe operator kept his wife's insurance, and my father's sign stayed up. And none of that is even the part that mattered to me. Because that night we drove home to that big marble house, and for the first time it didn't echo, and Julia sat me down at the kitchen table where all this started, and she slid a piece of paper across it. Just like the diner, right past the salt this time. It was a check, the last payment on the contract. "The completion bonus. The year's up," she said. "The contract's fulfilled. You did everything you promised and more. This is the rest of what I owe you, and, Dean, you're free. You never signed up for real. If you want to take this and go back to your life, no hard feelings. Ever. You saved 400 jobs. You more than earned it. Her voice shook. But I had to give you the out. Because for once in my life, I need to know somebody's staying. Because he wants to. Not because he's stuck. I looked at that check. $50,000. Everything I'd needed a year ago. I picked it up, and I tore it in half. Keep it, I said. I'm not done with Clause 7. She stared at me. Clause 7 expired with the contract, Dean. There's no Clause 7 anymore. Yeah, there is, I said, and I took her hand. I'm rewriting it. Clause 7. 2 heads on 2 pillows, every night, for the rest of our lives. No lawyer, no uncle, no money. I put the $40 ring back where it belonged, just because I want to. What do you say, Mrs. Sterling? You want to be married to a broke mechanic for real? She was already around the table. It's Marsh, she said, into my shoulder. I'm changing it to Marsh. So that's the story of how the worst 30 days of my life turned into the best year of it, and how a wall of pillows came down 1 pillow at a time, and how I learned that the cleanest money I ever turned down bought me the only thing I ever actually wanted. If you made it all the way here with me, you're my kind of people, and I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're listening from tonight, because it honestly floors me how far these stories reach. And tell me straight, if a stranger slid a contract across a table and offered you 50 grand to marry them for a year, would you have signed it like I did? Or would you have finished your coffee and walked out and never known? No wrong answer, just the one you'd have to live with. And if this one kept you company for a while, hit that like button so the next person finds it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And ring that bell, because I've got a new story for you every single week, and something tells me you and I are going to get along just fine. Take care of each other out there. I'll see you in the next one.